If parenthood came with a GPS, it would most likely just say recalculating. Join Yolandi Becker and her guest experts Wednesdays at 11 a.m. for Bump and Beyond, the show about pregnancy and babies. 101.9 megahertz of life.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. And yes, you are on Bump and Beyond, and I am your host, Yolandi Becker. I'm in a much better mood this week, I feel, mainly because the temperatures in Gauteng are becoming higher, and it has a very good impact on my well-being. Another thing that helped, of course, is that finally I'm recovering from COVID and I could go out running again, which again helps for my mental well-being. So all in all, a good day. Today's show specifically, though, I need you to be part of the conversation. It's an important topic as we are talking about struggling to get pregnant and infertility specifically. And as I don't have personal experience, not personally, but obviously each of us knows someone who has struggled to fall pregnant. I need you to be part of this conversation to make sure that we bring it the justice that it deserves. So, as always, you can obviously phone us, and the phone number is 010-140-3020. You can send us a telegram on 061-895-1019, or you can SMS us at 34519. SMSs are charged at R1.50. And please let us know whether or not you struggled, if you had to go for IVF, you've went through the journey, if you are currently struggling to get pregnant, if you know of your child or daughter that is struggling to get pregnant and you need some advice or assistance with the whole journey, please send us an SMS or a telegram. We would love for you to be part of this conversation. Coincidentally, my day started today. As each day, me and my family have breakfast together, and then I read them the highlights and the news that is happening. And it's with a 9 and 11-year-old, I do have to say you have to be a little bit selective sometimes with the news, because you don't want to only paint a grim idea of what the world can be like. And unfortunately, sometimes that's the only thing that is in the news. So it's, sometimes I tend to go to the lifestyle section as well, a little bit of the news. So it's not just current events. And coincidentally, I actually read this article about a US woman who becomes a first-time mom at the age of 52 after spending over 3.7 million rand on IVF. And apparently she still wants more kids. She's been struggling for quite some time to fall pregnant, and obviously has spent quite a lot of money to get there. And exactly that's what our discussion, again, like I said, today is all about. A large number of people are affected by infertility in their lifetime. Actually, according to a report published in April this year by the World Health Organization, around 17.5% of the adult population in the world, so that means 1 in 6 worldwide, experience fertility, showing actually and highlighting the urgent need to increase access to affordable, high-quality fertility care for those in need. The report does reveal an important truth that infertility doesn't discriminate. The sheer proportion of people affected show the need to widen access to fertility care and to ensure the issue is no longer sidelined in health research and policy. So that safe, effective, and affordable ways to attain parenthood are available to those who seek it. Again, like I mentioned, I want you to be part of the discussion. And that's exactly why I also brought someone in today to talk about this. And my expert guest today is Dr. Suzanna Sackstein. She is a qualified lecturer from the Wits University with an actual bachelor's degree in commerce. After working in corporate for 10 years and wanting to dedicate time to her family, Suzanne pursued a career in education. and has been lecturing in Wits since 1999. She just revealed to me as well that she actually has 5 kids and has some grandchildren, so a long lineage here. Suzanne actually, together with her husband, started Malka Ella after their own journey to have a family so that they could help those that were facing similar experience. Welcome, Suzanne. Thank you so
Thanks
much
very much.
for joining
Thanks
me.
very much.
Like I mentioned to you, even before, even when I first contacted you, that I said to you, I am a little bit nervous about this conversation because,
Right.
again, like most people, I like to talk about things that I know about and I've experienced myself. And I think we all have a tendency to do that. And in this case, though, I do feel it's necessary to talk about it, even though I don't have personal experience, because I know so many families and parents who struggled to get pregnant.
So even though you yourself personally haven't experienced it, just by having your own children, you understand the unbelievable joy and, amazing feelings that come and associated and experiences and comes with building a family and your marriage and so on. And so one can really just realize what that enormous lack is in people's lives. So even if you yourself haven't actually gone through it, just realizing what someone is missing can make you immensely sad and really try and understand a little bit about the experience that they have. I mean, I would like to say that going through an infertility journey is similar to someone going through the loss of someone very special to them. And the someone very special to them in this situation is a hope or a dream or a deep desire to have a family, to have a child. And I think that for me, what's hard about this is, and I'm not, making any comparison between the absolute pain that one feels when someone passes away, but it's really about like a loss every single month. Every single month that someone doesn't actually manage to conceive and have a child is this immense loss of hope, of potential, and coming back and then trying to rebuild yourself again for another month. And I mean, unfortunately, these things can go on for an extended period of time. I mean, you touched on something just when you started, is that, there are many, many people that experience infertility. However, treatment and certainly in South Africa is reserved for those people who can afford it. There is almost no government departments in this country that still deal with infertility. And I think, unfortunately, it's become a very much of a privileged passage, and those people who can't afford treatment end up, not being able to have children.
And I mean that's exactly, even like I said, even in the article that I read about from the world, I mean, I mentioned that woman from the US, first of all, who has 3.7 million rand. I mean, it's $200,000, but who has that kind of, if that's your dream to become a parent, obviously there is no monetary value that you can put on that.
But if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. Like, it doesn't.
If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. You can't go through that. And if I'm telling someone, in order to become a parent, you have to pay 3.7. I mean, I think 3.7 million.
And there's no guarantee that the 3.7 will result in. I think that is essentially the issue, which is why, in the Jewish community, I feel like we're extremely privileged to have an organization. And it's not just in South Africa, actually, the Jewish communities around the world. There are many, many organizations in Australia, in the United States, even in Israel, even though fertility care is in Israel funded to some degree. But, there are many, many organizations. And I think that speaks a lot to Judaism, being that family and children is the very core of our being. And, being able to have a family and leave generations, besides being, I mean, obviously it's a big mitzvah to do that, but I think that is the issue. And we get many, many emails literally throughout the years that we've started Malka Ella, from different organizations or different individuals saying, I'm desperate, please, can you just try and help me? And I mean, we started this organization specifically for Jewish people, and we have at many times, offered, we would, assist people in other denominations or in general to open up organizations. But I think it's something that has never really taken off, which is a huge pity because it is unaffordable. It's absolutely unaffordable.
I can't wait to chat more about this just now, and also your own journey of how it came about. But just now we'll follow up on that.
This is Bump and Beyond with Yolandi Becker, the show about pregnancy and babies. 101.9 megahertz of life.
Ooh, and better health starts here. Oh, that's new. See, I'm falling over my tongue today. Yeah, I've had a little bit, I feel like tongue twisting today already. But if you've just joined me, you are on Bump and Beyond, and I am your host, Yolandi Becker. And today's topic has started off, I feel very well, with my guest, Dr. Sackstein, talking about specifically infertility. As I mentioned before, you need to be part of this conversation. So if you have any comments or questions, please telegram us on 061-895-1019, or you can SMS us at 34519. SMSs are charged at R1.50. If you are so inclined and you're sitting in front of a computer, of course, you can also send us an email as well at instudio@chaifm.com. We would love to have your input on this discussion. So, Suzanne, before we went to ad break, you were mentioning specifically the Malka Ella and the work that you've done to help people specifically. How did this journey start for you personally?
So, I mean, I believe that everyone, people get married. I mean, it's very unusual that you meet people that don't want to have children, but they definitely are. But most people, get married and they decide that they want to have a family, and the same was true with us. And then obviously when we couldn't have kids, we landed up in fertility clinics, and we have children today, very gratefully, and it's never without appreciation. But after we have triplets, and so it clearly wasn't. Also, at the time, our children are older now, but infertility was not something that was really spoken about at all. I mean, you certainly wouldn't have had a radio show or any conversation about it. So I think that today people are much more open, but in those days it wasn't. But because we had the triplets, I think it was quite obvious. I mean, the incidence of triplets naturally is extremely, extremely low. So someone actually approached me. There was another couple in the Jewish community that was needing to have treatment. And at the time, a treatment was about 10,000 Rand. But I mean, we're talking about 22 years ago. So even then, maybe 22,000 Rand was like, I don't know how much to have, but a lot. And she called me and she said, do you think we can raise the money for this couple? And I said, yeah, well, let's try. Anyway, it literally took 3 phone calls. 3 phone calls, we raised the money, and we funded the treatment. The treatment was successful, and the couple went on to have twins. And then after that, we were like, well, it wasn't that difficult to raise this money. Maybe we should think about starting, because I always, when we ourselves had our own children, I always was left with the question is, how do we play this forward, and we are so grateful for our journey. And so how do we actually assist others? And we used to sit in the waiting rooms and often hear people say, okay, well, I can have one treatment, just one. And it's often that one treatment's just not good enough, which is, it's not just a treatment today can cost anywhere between 80 and, depending on what is needed, between 80 and 250,000 Rand. So I think, for us, that's what, and there was a couple who have actually since immigrated from South Africa, and they, together with myself and my husband, we started Malka Ella very, very small. And since then, we funded literally over thousands of treatments. And the treatments extend from, just a general in vitro fertilization to a timed cycle to genetics. There's a large there should be a large focus on, doing genetic testing amongst the South African Jewish community because we carry very similar genes. We've got counseling, and the organization has almost organically grown through that. But in my journey through helping couples, there are very few couples that need to, in the Jewish community, amongst which we are extremely privileged, need to walk away without having children if they're prepared to, put in what is required, which is the ability to kind of reframe their mind about what's going to be okay and their plan to have a child, how they want to have a child. And I think it's amazing. And I would never have begun this had we ourselves not gone through this journey. And there's no organization that helps people that hasn't started because someone else went through it. So in retrospect, I'm grateful that we went through the journey, but it's very hard to watch other people go through the journey. But I know that in most cases, I really believe with all the help that is available. And I'm not just talking about spiritual help, and I'm talking about medical help, and I'm talking about financial assistance and emotional support, that people really come through this and they build families.
It sounds so amazing, really. Honestly, even what I've heard and what I've seen, it sounds really amazing. But what are some of the reasons now? Because you said that, we know it is a journey, and there's different reasons why people might need to, or that they are infertile, or maybe it's not even that it's that extreme. But what are some of the reasons why couples might struggle to get pregnant?
Right. So, I would say in the last 10 years, there's been an increase in male infertility. And there's many, by the way, let me just correct, I'm not a medical doctor at all. I think I wanted to be one, but I'm not. I have a PhD in academics. So I don't know the medical research, but I have read some medical papers in terms of male infertility is definitely on the increase, and it is accounting for more and more of the work that we actually do. Either someone is born with what we call a double X chromosome, and so therefore they are unable to have their sperm production. They are unable to produce fertile sperm. Or, there are schools of thought that the way we live, the stress, and because, sperm is produced every 3 months as opposed to a woman who's born with all her eggs. Female infertility is also really common. We have that often someone's chronological age. So you may be 25, but actually your body and your fertility, like bearing, is like the same as a 40-year-old. And so we do certain tests, and we can actually tell how fertile someone is and how long they have in order to have children. So we've established that we have someone who may not, they could have something called polycystic ovarian syndrome. There are multiple reasons, but there's either a female factor, there's a male factor, there's a combined factor, or there's no factor. And, I think it's not easy to deal when we identify factors, but what's hard is when there's no reason whatsoever. We can't figure it out. We don't know. She seems okay. He seems okay. We put the egg and sperm together, and yet there's still no pregnancy. And that is the most challenging. So when we can kind of identify, they've got this, not that it's easy. Recurrent miscarriages are also considered infertility. So not just not being able to conceive, but someone having more than 2 or 3 recurrent miscarriages, next to one after another. That's also another reason that we would consider infertility. And we have had cases where, someone's had to use a surrogate because they themselves, we're not sure 100% why. And there are many treatments today, but they're mainly experimental, why we would not be able to sustain a pregnancy. And that is devastating for some.
And you've touched on lots of things that I'm going to elaborate on just now. And if you've only just joined us, you are on 101.9 Chai FM. This is Bump and Beyond, and I'm your host, Yolandi Becker, and I'm speaking to Dr. Suzanna Sackstein today about infertility, and specifically also about her organization, Malka, helping families with infertility, more importantly, and we'll get a lot more to that. But you mentioned there also like the the chronological age that someone is not necessarily what their fertility age is. And I've actually wondered about that quite a lot, because in general, I personally had children for my era relatively early. I had both my kids before I was 30. Luckily, I know in the Jewish community, it's also not uncommon to have children at that age. But it is a tendency, I feel, in general. There's a tendency for that, exactly that thing where women think, oh, okay, lots of women are having kids now in their 30s, late 30s, early 40s, and it's becoming kind of normal. But in my head, I know that each woman is born with a certain amount of eggs for your lifetime. And obviously each month, if you have your period, one egg is gone, one egg is gone. But the reality
is we ovulate multiple eggs, not just one.
Yes, and that's what I also want to say as well. With the prevalence of non-identical twins these days, obviously also you realize that it's not just one. So is that then not affecting the chronological, the age of your fertility?
So what is the question that you're asking, is that because people are pushing off having children?
Yes, is it not? Is that having an impact?
So no, we know that younger women are more fertile, which is why women, cease to have children, even if they want to have children at some point in their lives. So, I mean, there is definitely a tendency to push off having children. It's not as prevalent in the religious Jewish community, because people tend to get married younger and have children at a younger age, certainly quite before they're 30. But in the population, which is, less observant, people are choosing to have kids in their early 30s, mid 30s. And we know at around about the age of mid 30s, your fertility rate does in fact drop off, no matter even if you but you can get someone who's 40 something and super fertile, but you can also get a 20-year-old that's not super fertile. So I do think that that is impacting on people's fertility. At Malka Ella, we do offer what we call fertility preservation, because there is a point that you're not going to be able to use your own eggs, even if you happen to want to have children, because we run according to the Jewish laws and the South African Beth Din. I mean, people can use those eggs only if they're married. Orthodox afterwards, but we have had many cases where people have used them and gone on to have had families. So they froze their eggs when they were in their late 20s, and they only ended up getting married when they were 34, and are now using their own genetic material to be able to have children. So I think that is, there's a lot of technology that's progressing, and that certainly helps us.
No.
I mean, the other thing, and I know that this is not related, but I think it's important. I got a question on this yesterday, is what about someone who's going through cancer treatment? So either, male or female, and they're younger and they haven't yet actually got married. And so now, the chemo and all the different drugs that they can take definitely will affect their fertility, their ability to be fertile later. So we have cases where we either, before someone starts, if they're old enough, the male needs to be, I think, over 16 or 17 to have fertile sperm. And then we would freeze those sperm. And we would also then freeze women's eggs so that they could be used later on. Obviously, if they're married and they're going to start the chemo, we would freeze the embryo. And then hopefully when they recover, they'll be able to do that.
Oh, wow. I mean, what you guys are doing is it's multifaceted, and it just shows you how it's not just you're infertile. There's so many factors. And I mean, all the specialists that you have on your team and that you're working with and all this type of thing, it's not so easy. But that brings me to my next point as well, because I mean, I recently had a friend, and she is a little bit older, but it was her third time that she was now trying to also get pregnant. Or the first two pregnancies were easy, nothing to worry about. But she was starting to then get a little bit worried because it took a little bit longer the third time around. Again, she was a little bit older now. But when is the point where you need to, because you also don't just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and then you're pregnant necessarily. It takes a little bit of time. It might not happen the first time. When do you get to the point where you need to start wondering
So
looking into it.
They're general guidelines, Yolandi. So anyone under the age of about 25, but I mean, I'm saying that's taking into account that they don't have any other underlying issues like thyroid issues that have contributed to premature ovarian failure, for example. But under the age of 25, women are usually pregnant within the first 6 months of trying with, unprotected intercourse. That is a guideline. However, most doctors will not really look at treating again without the underlying causes unless you've really been trying for a year. Even though, so the majority of people, I don't want to use the 80-20 rule because it's like everything's 80-20. I don't really understand. I don't know the exact percentage, but majority of people under the age of 25, women under the age of 25 will conceive within the first 6 months if everything is okay. After that, so I would say to someone under the age of 25, after 6 months, I think it would be important to just have preliminary kinds of investigations. Like, are their hormone levels a little like normal? Is their AMH, which is their egg quality and store, is that normal? Because they may not necessarily have had any problems, going through puberty, but maybe there are underlying issues. So those are the things I would check. After a year, I would, definitely recommend them seeing a specialist to try and get a full workup of that. Over the age of 25, even though it takes us it can take significantly longer, we suggest to between like 30ish that people go and see specialists after 6 months. Why? Because there is a smaller limited time frame that they are maybe able to be fertile. So that's really what it is. But I think that, the women I've spoken to, I think people get an innate, if women have their problem because, they've gone through, they have an innate sense that there's something that's not right. I know it sounds completely like unscientific.
No, but I do. I can imagine that. I think that also as women, when it comes to that, obviously we have our period every month and how it goes and since when you started, when it happened. So I do feel that early on, we also talk about it, obviously, with our friends, and what is kind of normal and what is not normal with regards to the days it's supposed to go and how regular it should be happen. So I feel like you could obviously have. We also have instinctively feelings about lots of things.
Right. And I think what's hard is that often when people are going through this process, they think that they are the only person because all their friends and their sister-in-laws and their cousins and the people that got married 4 years after them and all have children, and they're the only people that don't have children. And that's why the emotional support, as much as, and we have world-class fertility doctors in this country. Really, really world-class. And a special shout out to Dr. Yossi Unterslag, who does an enormous amount of work for Malka Ella and has helped a huge amount of people in the South African Jewish community who works at the Vitalab practice in Johannesburg. We don't have a preference. When people come to us for funding, there's a process that they need to go through. And so they first apply with their financials and then they get screened by the counselor who works with Malka Ella. And we just want to make sure that they are like in a good space because this can be quite rigorous for them. And then once we've actually done that, there's a financial decision. We make a contribution, however much, depending on their financial circumstances. And then we really support them through the process.
Oh, great. But we're going to get more into detail because we need people to know where to go to and when they should go to you just after this break.
This is Bump and Beyond with Yolandi Becker, the show about pregnancy and babies. 101.9 megahertz of life.
Welcome back to my show, Bump and Beyond, with me, Yolandi Becker. And today I'm speaking to Dr. Suzanna Sackstein specifically. She is the founder of Malka Ella, a wonderful organization that helps the Jewish community, specifically parents who want to become parents but who are struggling. And it's been such a wonderful talk because I think the big takeaway for me so far is really the fact that I mean, there's lots of reasons for infertility. We spoke about male reasons, female reasons for infertility. But Suzanne, for me, the biggest takeaway thus far is the fact that you are so confident in the team that you've created. And like even you said, thousands of people that you've assisted, that the success rate is so high. For me, that's the big thing, is that even though there's lots of reason to be infertile and struggle to get pregnant, the reality is that there's also a lot of hope out there and a lot of help out there if you are struggling. And with organizations like Malka, even the financial part of it, because it can be very expensive, can also be taken care of. But in the end, let's start first before we get to that part of how they can contact you and what all you help with, because I think that is really important. But you mentioned before as well, specifically infertility with women. There's various reasons why women can be, and you mentioned PCOS and also the age of women and. But what is some of the things women can do actually then to help to increase their fertility or personally?
Right. So I think two things that would be really key. One is that you have to have a safe, emotional, supportive environment around you. And so my advice to anyone going through it is identify those people in your personal space that you want to share with. And I think it's very hard when you share with no one. So, but it's got to be people that are going to be in a safe, they're going to help, as opposed to just be in it for like trying to find out what's going on or make you feel uncomfortable. So, and it doesn't have to be anyone in particular. It generally tends to be that the closer you are in terms of your relationship, in terms of family, the more difficult. So children and parents, because the parents themselves are aching for their children and they wish that they could help them. So usually it's not those people to include in your circle, but one or two people that you can really reach out to and say, I've just had the worst day ever, and so-and-so is pregnant and this one's pregnant. And it's also not someone who's going to judge you in any way. So that would be in a personal capacity. Obviously, if one needs to go through counseling, it is an extremely traumatic process to go through. And so I would suggest that as well. The other thing that women can do is really to have a healthy body. So that's about your mind and your emotions, but your healthy body. And we have, as part of Malka, a dietitian who's been trained in fertility and understanding. But a lot of women with polycystic ovarian syndrome, in fact, tend to have more weight issues. And so if they can focus on healthy eating, and it's not just about the fertility, but when you feel like your body is in sync and you are actually not, just eating like junk all the time and putting on weight, and it becomes a vicious cycle, because people put on weight, then it doesn't work, then they put on more weight, and. So we offer that as a service to people who are struggling, to counsel with them, to try and get them into a healthier way of life, because it doesn't just affect your fertility, it affects you in general, and you'll feel better about yourself. So I think it's the emotional and it's the physical as well, and it needs to be holistic.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to just say that. I mean, for me, that's the wonderful thing about what you're talking about the whole time. It's never just one thing. It's always a multitude of things that you're talking about, meaning that it is a holistic approach that you're following, because it is, I think, or I know from friends of mine that have gone through this, the emotional impact that this has on a person. I mean, you even started this conversation with the story of like every month the hope and the dream is slashed, and then you have to, and I mean, the amount of strength that you need to go through something like that. And in all honesty, in some ways, I think it does prepare you a little bit for parenthood, that.
However, Yolandi, I want to stop you there, just because I think what's interesting, and you touch on a point, is that some people invest so much energy and they believe that if I just have a child, everything will be okay. So I don't have to work on myself. I don't have to look after myself. I don't have to work on my marriage. I don't have to work on my connections and my relationships outside of this. And if I just have this baby, everything will be okay. And then what happens is they just have this baby and everything is not just okay.
Yeah.
And so my point is that it's kind of like changing a tire when you're going 120 kilometers an hour. You need to keep the momentum in most of the other things. And okay, so it's fine if you don't go to every your friend's children's birthday party. That's okay. But one needs to still engage within the world where it's comfortable and okay. You need to engage with your husband, your partner. You have to be able to do that. Otherwise, the baby comes and it's like, oh my gosh, is this it? And having your own children, it's not so easy sometimes.
Yeah, no, but that's also, I mean, I was one of those idiots who only prepared for pregnancy. And then when the baby came, I was like, oh crap, I never read a parenting book, actually. I only read pregnancy books. Hence why I now have this show to help prepare parents. And I think what I meant with my comment that it kind of prepares you for parenthood is those conflicting emotions, I think, is part of parenthood as well, where you are allowed to, when you find out, I think if you're struggling to get pregnant, you are allowed to feel sad by it. And in the same breath, be happy for your friend. Right. And that's lots of those times as a parent where you love it. It's one of the most amazing things, but it's also one of the most difficult things. And sometimes I really hate it. I really am like, and I'm like, oh, and I think that's what I meant by it kind of prepares you for that thinking of these conflicting emotions that's happening. And that's absolutely normal. I think that's actually not even just parenting. I think that's being a human in the end of the day.
Absolutely, making sense of the tension.
Yeah, I absolutely love this holistic approach that you have. But on that note as well, what is some of the psychological impacts that happen during this journey of infertility?
I think jealousy is a huge one. I think
really?
people feel like, how come they have children and I can't? And I think there's a lot of guilt. Like, what did I do? Why am I being punished? Like, why is this not
And I mean, these are some of the worst emotions to feel.
Yeah, despair, absolute despair. Like, will this ever work? Will this ever be? I mean, when my kids were younger, I used to often go into their rooms and just like touch them to see if they were, like real, because it's like, is this real? Could this actually happen to me? Am I actually really a mom? So I think that there's such a myriad of emotions, and I think, I think we need to be supported throughout this, because it is very, very challenging. It's every little girl's dream. Like, I'm going to get married and I'm going to have children. I'm going to have a family. And then, and you see everyone pushing their prams, and you see everyone. And often what happens, especially in the Jewish communities, you'll go out for a meal on Shabbos, and there's like a few couples together, and like most of them have kids, and all they talk about is how hard it is. Oh, it's so hard. I have to wake up at night, and it's so hard because of this. And there's the one person there that's just like, you kidding me? Like, I'd be happy to wake up at night. So I think a message to people who aren't going through it, like yourselves, is try and be sensitive. It's not that you don't have to speak about it, but you have more to your life than just about how hard it is, where the stage that you're at. And so the sensitivity is a big thing. We need to learn it.
I'm very much looking forward to also hear a little bit about what Malka and how people can contact you and how we can help you. More importantly, just after this ad break.
This is Bump and Beyond with Yolandi Becker, the show about pregnancy and babies. 101.9 megahertz of life.
Welcome back. This is 101.9 Chai FM with me, Yolandi Becker, on Bump and Beyond. And we're talking specifically infertility. And as always, I'm running out of time, and I'm loving talking to Suzanne about our topic today of fertility. Before you go, Suzanne, there's two things I want to do. The first one is we need to answer a question. Someone asked a question. I'm not 100% sure if you will be able to answer it, because as Suzanne mentioned, she is not actually a doctor in medicine. But yeah, the question is, after an ectopic pregnancy and removal of one of the tubes, how is it How easy? See, my tongue is twisting today. How easy is it to fall pregnant? Person of 24, and it was the first pregnancy.
So, I mean, there's definitely room to try naturally after an ectopic pregnancy, because now this person only has the one tube. We know that we ovulate. We have 2 ovaries, and we ovulate predominantly in one, but we do ovulate in the other. There is also something called a transmigration of eggs, where you can actually have 1 tube, and you can ovulate. Let's say you've got the left tube, you ovulate from the right tube, and the tube actually comes and sucks up the egg from the other ovary. And it's very uncommon, but it does happen. I even know someone it did happen to. So that's certainly not academic, but it does happen. But I mean, the suggestion to a 24-year-old, and is to be very cognizant of the fact, to try for, about 3 or 4 months. If there is no conception after that time, is that I would go and try and see a specialist to have some type of intervention. And you wouldn't need a huge amount of intervention because there has been a pregnancy. But what you would want is maybe like a triggered ovulation, where they can trigger ovulation on the particular side where you have the tube. Okay. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes, it sounds to me like a good answer. But on that note, before you go, Suzanne, the last thing I want to know is, firstly, how can people make contact with you? And secondly, I know that you've got an exhibition coming up, so tell us a little bit about that as well.
Okay, so firstly, you can just contact us on our Malka Ella website. All our details are there. It's malkaella.co.za. I didn't actually mention, I'm going to just go quickly, because we only have like 1 minute. But Malka Ella is named after 3 children who passed away in the Jewish community. The one being Malka Ella Salatan, which was the original person who it was named after. She was a young girl who was unfortunately killed in a car accident. And then also Nathaniel Fagenbohm. And recently, someone who works for us, her granddaughter passed away after only 6 weeks. Her name was Libby. And so really, this organization is just steeped with trying to perpetuate people's memories of their own children for the children that they couldn't have. So I think it's a huge merit for them. It really is. It makes me look teary. But so you can contact us on our Malka Ella website. You can learn all about us. We've got very different divisions. We help with pregnancy loss. We help with fertility, egg preservation. We also help with if someone wants to have, and they're not going through Malka Ella for the funding, then they can also have like a person checking in the lab to make sure that the procedure is your egg, your sperm. All of that. We have genetic testing that we fund, and we have counseling.
Yeah, Suzanne, we unfortunately have run out of time. But
can I not say about my exhibition?
The
the exhibition begins on Sunday. It's currently live on malkaella.co.za auction. And it's the biggest auction of it's Jewish women, 75 Jewish artists, and we are having it at the Johannesburg Holocaust Center. It is from Sunday to Tuesday is the live exhibition, but you can go online, see it. It really helps us raise money. We use 3 million rand a year, and all proceeds are going to Malka Ella as the art has been donated.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Everyone, thanks for listening. Thank you, and see you next week.